Hello and welcome back to the Eyes of O Gaming channel. Thank you for joining me as we investigate another older game in the What Is It and Is It Worth It game review and showcase series. During the review, I will try my best to stay objective and as spoiler-free as possible as we go over the various aspects of the game, such as mechanics, graphics, and sound, as well as giving a general idea of the world the game takes place in. I won't be giving a number rating to the game as I find number rating systems to be very arbitrary considering the subjective nature of video games. Instead, I'll try my best to give enough information that you can decide for yourself if the game is worth it for you. If you are interested in a more subjective look, stay to the end of the video for my personal recommendation of if I would recommend the game, and if I actually enjoyed it with a simple yes, no, or sometimes a maybe, and a short explanation of why or why not. When you think of games that you've played in the past, do you prefer to play the role of the healer or a silent killer, a monster among humans? Well, why not both? Today we are taking a look at Vampyr or Vampyr. I'm going to be saying Vampyr for simplicity. A game that released in 2018, being developed by Dontnod Entertainment and published by Focus Home Interactive. Let's go through this game piece by piece, looking at different aspects of what makes up this game, while trying to stay as objective as possible and story spoiler free. So sit back, relax, grab a refreshing glass of blood? I prefer coffee, but whatever works. And try to answer the most important question asked in this review series. Is this game worth it for you? Let's find out together. So let's set the plot. The game takes place in London during the Spanish flu epidemic of 1919. Because, we haven't had enough epidemics lately. Anyway, you'll take control of Dr. Jonathan Reed, who is a war veteran, returning to London but ends up a vampire in a city full of death and disease, as well as a nice helping of different variations of vampires. Essentially, you play out a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde cliché character, though more intertwined with each other rather than the personality shift, as there is no physical switch between the two sides of yourself. Rather, you are both at the same time, all the time. Throughout the game, you'll need to decide if you want to embrace a more vampirical nature, killing innocent or mostly innocent civilians, to make yourself stronger, or walk the straight and narrow path of the doctor and healer, with a greater challenge to yourself. Most games are combat-focused, separated by sequences of dialogue. Vampyr is a dialogue game split up by sequences of combat. In the beginning of the game, you'll spend the majority of it exploring and conversing, trying to learn about the inhabitants of the city's various neighborhoods through clues. It seems to progress this way through much of the game until you hit a certain point between the halfway and 2/3 of the way through, where it will shift gears into a more combat-heavy experience. The game is set in third person and will be set in a fairly open-world map, consisting of a handful of neighborhoods in London. The combat itself feels quite stiff and will take some getting used to. Personally, I felt that the combat was the weakest part of the game and was actually more enjoyable in the beginning, when it took a far back seat to the exploration and the sort of detective work early on. Aside from the combat and dialogue mechanics, you also gain experience, which you can use to purchase additional skills or level up the ones you currently have. Graphics are pretty good in this game. Unfortunately, there's not going to be a ton of diversity of environments, as majority of the game will be taking place in a plague-stricken London. That said, the environment which has been crafted for the game is done quite well. The NPCs look pretty good, and the entire vibe or feel of the game is a dark, early 1900s setting. I didn't run into substantial graphical glitches. However, I did encounter a rather annoying bug, which I will touch on when talking about sound, as it was more affected there. One thing of note is that when collecting items or taking items from boxes, the animation felt strangely last generation. It wasn't a huge issue for me, but just felt weirdly out of place in this game. So the game is mostly open world, though not as open as most modern games. I wouldn't go so far as to say this is a Metroidvania, though I would respect that argument if it was made. However, the player does have a feeling of being directed, rather than having an absolute freedom to explore. It felt that this limitation was more of an asset than a liability, as many modern open world games have been so focused on creating a huge world that there is a lack of anything interesting between locations. In Vampyr, there always seems to be something around the corner. The game is an RPG with skills you can purchase and upgrade, including passive and activated abilities. These are leveled up by experience, which is gained through combat or embracing non-hostile NPCs. In other words, killing them and draining their blood to become stronger. Just keep in mind that if you do choose to embrace an NPC, it might have an impact on the district they reside in, could prevent you from taking or completing specific quests, or have an impact in some other facet in the story. In order to level up, you will need to find a safe house and rest. The one thing that I found a little annoying is that this can potentially cause you to fail side quests. It didn't actually happen to me during my playthrough, so I'm not sure how strict this is, as there's not a countdown for side quest deadlines. But it was something that I was always thinking of when resting and leveling my character. For the most part, sound is pretty good. Dialogue is well written and well delivered, and effects sound as you would expect without anything standing out for the wrong reasons. The music is a little quirky, but is fitting for the game, and I found that I quite enjoyed it throughout. And now for the sound bug that I mentioned earlier, which is more than just a simple sound issue. When engaged in boss fights, if the player loses, I found that on respawn the game seems to degrade. I don't really have a better way to describe it. Basically, if you die when fighting a boss, sometimes the sound will go into a slow motion, and eventually even the physics start slowing down. If you beat the boss on the first try, or even the second, I didn't find that I ran into this bug. However, with each attempt it seems that the likelihood of encountering this goes up. Eventually, if you die during the weird slow motion fight, the game will eventually crash to desktop. Although it is quite frustrating, it is nice to know that when the game reloads, or if you just stop and reload, you can get rid of this bug.
What has happened to the London that I knew?
This is no place for you, sir. Hey! Don't... It's one of them! Look at it!
So what games can we compare this one to? While the environment definitely gave me vibes from A Plague Tale: Innocence, at least the darker portions of that game taking place in urban centers. Another one that instantly comes to mind is Call of Cthulhu. The main characters from both games look and act quite similar, and the voice actor is also the same, making the two games feel very comparable. Even the dark and supernatural setting, though Vampyr is more historical myth rather than the Lovecraftian Call of Cthulhu style, they do have similar traits. Aside from those, the only other game that felt similar to me was Sherlock Holmes: Crimes and Punishment, and mostly that is just due to the amount of dialogue in the game. You will be talking to many people throughout, and although not nearly as in-depth, you will be acting as somewhat of an investigator at times. Though don't expect the Sherlock Holmes level of deduction to be required. It's mostly just uncovering clues about individuals and questioning them along those lines to get greater insight into the story. So now that we've looked at some of the features of the game, we reach the point of my review where I give a more subjective look at my personal experience with it. Please keep in mind that the following is just my opinion of the game, and if the features and genre seem interesting to you, you should definitely check it out for yourself, as not all games are for all gamers. The game that you hate might be the next gamer's all-time favorite, which is one of the things that I love about gaming. There's always something for someone out there. So did I enjoy this game?
Yep.
Yeah, it was okay. It felt like the difficulty in the beginning is quite high, but as you progress it becomes trivial over time as you gain experience and unlock skills. The dialogue for the most part is really good and will keep you interested. However, if the setting and story are not something that appeals to you, you may find this one to somewhat drag and feel a little long. I felt like the beginning did not have as interesting a hook as I would have liked, and was not really driven to play the game. However, as you continue and slowly build up a rapport with the various NPCs, and start to care about what is happening in the world, you may find, as I did, that the game becomes increasingly more interesting as you progress. Really, my biggest complaint with this game has to be the clunky combat, which is just not fun at all. It feels like it's there just because it has to be there, but that it was a very low priority to get it right, and the real enjoyment comes from uncovering the story and interacting with the different characters. So I hope you enjoyed this look at Vampyr. Have you already played through this one? What were your own thoughts on the game? Did you agree or disagree with my own assessment of it? If you disagreed, let me know why. Maybe there's something I didn't think of and you can convince me. I'd love to hear about your own experiences down in the comments, or if my review showcase was helpful, I'd like to know if you decided to go ahead with it or not. Either way, if you found this video interesting or entertaining, please let me know with a thumbs up, and also consider subscribing to the channel. I make and upload a variety of gaming content, not just reviews like this, but also walkthroughs, mod showcases, let's play, and more. And I'd love to have you join the community and help direct the future of the channel. Otherwise, thank you so much for taking the time to watch today, and until next time, take care.